Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. I am very excited today because in the last few weeks I have wrapped up the fourth Robin Hobb series, which is the Wild Chronicles. And those books include here, there's four of them. It is Dragon Keeper, this is book one. And then we have Dragon Haven. And then the third book is City of Dragons. I hope this is catching on the thing pretty well. And then we have Blood of Dragons, which is book 4 of Wild Chronicles. And these are all written by Robin Hobb, of course. This is part of the bigger series called Realm of the Elderlings, which is 14 books, I believe. So these are books 9 through 10, or 9, well, 8 through... I am sorry, I did not get the numbering right, but it's the fourth series, the first one being Farseer Trilogy, featuring Fitz and my favorite character in the series, the Fool. And then we have Live Ship Traders, which is the first part of this series, or sort of mini-series, the first half of it. And then after that, we have the third series, Tawny Man, which is personally my favorite, I believe, in terms of individual books. They're some of my favorite, but I think Live Ship Traders is still my number one series within Realm of the Elderlings, in terms of a series as a whole, as a totality. And then we have this series here, as I said, which is the Wild Chronicles. And I will start off non-spoiler, and then I will get into spoilers, because there's a lot to talk about with this series. And first and foremost is the question of, does this compare well with the other series, such as the Tawny Man series or Live Ship Traders? And personally, I think this is my least favorite of the series. I enjoyed these books for what they were. I gave these books a rating ranging from 6 out of 10 all the way up to 8 out of 10. It never reached those higher ratings that I expect from Robin Hobb, because Robin Hobb is usually an 8.5 to 9 out of 10 author for me. And Tawny Man, I gave a 9.5, if I remember correctly. My memory is not the best. But what this series is about is sort of I'm trying to, because I realize now that the spoilers for previous series. So I will just say that this series is all about taking care of dragons and getting them to a location that they really need to go to in order to further the species. And we have a lot of characters that are new to the story that we have just met. We have characters like Thymara, who is one of the Ranwild girls who are hired on to help with this task of moving the dragons. We also have Elise, who is probably my favorite character of the series, and she is a historian for dragons, and she has dedicated her whole life to learning about dragons. And so she convinces her husband to send her down to the Ranwilds and sort of give, or to earn as much money as she is able to get. Because her husband's very greedy. He's not a good person at all. And we also have very complex characters like Cedric, who I thought was my favorite character, or sort of new character, aside from Elise. And these three characters make up the majority of the POVs in these 4 books. And Elise, Thymara, and Cedric are my favorite characters of this series, because we also have a lot of POVs with people who are on the ships with them, and also a lot of merchants, because they are coming in wanting to exploit the dragons and try to make as much money as they are able. But you also have returning characters from Live Ship Traders who come into the story and help to progress a lot of the movement in terms of the political side, because they have a lot more power than Thymara and Elise. And so they come in, and I really enjoyed their parts. I thought Malta's storyline was my favorite. I really did not like where Selden goes, and I'll go into more of that into the spoilers. But just a general plot talking about, or I'm just sort of giving general plot here. It's not really any spoilers. But I really felt like the biggest weakness to this series was the pacing, because book one I felt like it was just slogging so much. And Robin Hobb usually, every chapter just pushes the story forward in really exciting and unexpected ways. And there were moments of that throughout the series, but book one I felt like was double the length that it had to be. And I really tried to enjoy the story that Robin Hobb was telling, but we didn't really have any characters outside those three characters that I was really that interested in, and the pacing was just all over the place for me. I did not like it. Book one was the 6 out of 10 book that I rated, and then we had Dragonhaven, which I thought was much better, or Dragon Keeper. Yeah, Dragon Keeper is book one. I'm sorry, and then Dragonhaven is book two. Book two, I felt like really stepped up the game in terms of what was going on in the story. There was stakes. The characters were really becoming their own, and I really started to get invested in them. And I really enjoyed book two. I gave it, I think, a 8 out of 10, 7.5 out of, or yeah, 7.5. Excuse me, I'm just blabbering here, but I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 for Dragonhaven. I really enjoyed it. I was really happy to have read it. And then City of Dragons, I thought, was the strongest book in this series. I absolutely loved it. It was the 8.5 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed all of the characters in it because everyone was really interesting in the POVs and sort of what they were exploring. And we also have sort of more action happening with previous characters that we met in Live Ship Traders. So they started becoming more important to the central storyline in these 4 books. And I really enjoyed their parts as well. And Elise, I think, was the smallest role in this book. She didn't do as much in this book as a lot of the other characters like Thymara and Cedric. And I also really love the character of Carson, who I won't give spoilers about what his role is, but he was a character I was really invested in, and I really love his dynamics with other characters. Really well written. I just loved that character. He was just really fascinating, really lovely, the type of man I wish I could have, just to give a joke there, but it was just a really great book, and Cedric and Thymara really carried that book. And the final book, City of Dragons, or Blood of Dragons, I'm sorry, I enjoyed it for the most part. I really did not enjoy a lot of the conclusions to storylines. I think the dragons, it's not a spoiler, but the dragons are really, really active in this series. In the previous series, in Realm of the Elderlings, there was not as much dragons going on because they were very small, they were not hatched yet, and now that we have a lot more dragons in the world, I'm really loving that part of the storyline of these 4 books, and that's what carried my interest throughout the series were the dragons, because all of the dragons have such distinct personalities. All of them are really interesting. All of them contribute to the storylines, and all of them have different pieces of lore that I really loved hearing about. And I was really upset that that was really the most interesting part of these books, because aside from anything related to the dragons, I really did not care about it that much, this series. And I think overall I gave this series a 7 out of 10. It's good. I think it really progresses the storyline of the overall world, because dragons are not that prevalent in the Realm of the Elderlings series. And so I really enjoyed this series for the dragons. And I will say that the thing that I really wish this book had more of was more lore outside of the dragons. But this is sort of focused on the dragon, so I can't be upset that much. I just really wish that there was less love triangles, because that's what most of the human stories were about. and Thymara gets wrapped up into that, and that's when I started caring about her character arc a little bit less. But it comes back around in book 4. It becomes more interesting there. So there's a lot of sort of like peaks and valleys, I guess, is the best way to call it. I just really did not care for the romance in the series. Usually I love it. And Robin Hobb's stories, like Live Ship Traders, I think was my absolute favorite. In terms of that, I really love the romances that Fitz goes throughout each of his series, but I really did not care about these characters enough for me to be interested in, oh, who are they going to get with, by the end of the story. I really did not care. And that's a prevalent issue that I find on Goodreads and on YouTube about this series, is that the romance angle is just not there. It's just not there. And I did not like it either. It's a common issue, so I'm not the only one who thought about that. But that really tanked the series for me. It starts all the way from book 1. And there's this constant like, oh, what if, about the characters. Will they get together or not? And I just don't care. I just did not care about that. My eyes were skimming over the pages during those scenes. And I think Robin Hobb is still a fantastic writer. She's one of my favorite writers of today. But this series was a noticeable step down. So in terms of spoilers, for anyone who hasn't read the series, I'm going to be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't read it, please dip out now. So in terms of spoilers, I think the romance angle, as I said, was a really big letdown, because outside of Elise and who she ends up with, and I can't even remember his name anymore, I really loved the relationship. I hated the character of Hest, who I have not mentioned yet, because I just hated him. I hated his attitude. I hated his character. I hated his family. I hated his parents. I hated everybody related to Hest. And anytime he came up, I was just angry at the book, because I just did not care about him whatsoever. And he is a character who becomes a major POV in books 3 and 4, mostly in book 4, where he actually journeys down into the Rain Wilds. And he ends up trying to take back his wife, Elise, because they are married. But Elise, in book 2, I believe, sends out a letter publicly denouncing him and saying, I'm divorced from him. This is the law. He has not upheld his side of the contract in the wedding contract, and so I will not uphold my end of it. And she publicly does this. Everyone in Hess's storyline is really pissed off about it. We have this whole storyline of an assassin who is aligned with the Duke of Chalced, I believe. And I hated that storyline as well, because it ends up that the Duke is trying to take as many dragon pots as he can in order to eat it and sort of restore his health. And his daughter is a character who I wanted a lot more of, and we get nothing about the Duke and his family until book 4, and that's why book 4 took a noticeable dip for me, because I thought her character was really fascinating. Her relationship with Selden, who is from Live Ship Traders. He has been captured because he is turning into a dragon from Icefire's influence, I believe, or Tintaglia. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but his body is transforming into a dragon, into an elderling. And we have this whole storyline where people kidnap him, and he's sort of put up as a roadside attraction in the circus. And everyone is just sort of shocked that they're unable to do anything for him. And most people don't care about him outside of the people who want to sell him to the Duke, because they know that they're going to make a ton of money selling him. And once he is sold off to the Duke, there's these really nasty scenes, really graphic scenes, where the Duke is cutting off pieces of him and eating it. And once he eats it, he is revitalized health-wise. And he's like a vampire, starts sucking the blood out of Selden. And I hated this storyline. I thought it was very interesting. It piqued my interest because it was something I was not expecting, but I hated the storyline overall because it just felt really cruel to Selden because he had a very, very nasty relationship with his father and how he was tortured and, all this stuff. Well, not his father, but I'm confusing him with Rentro. But I think it's him. It's him or Rentro is taken. And he is just tortured through all 4 books. No one knows where he is. Malta is trying to find him. I think it is Selden because he's the little brother of Malta. So I think it is Selden, but I don't know. I don't remember that well. I'm sorry, but he was a character I did not like reading about in this series at all. I was really upset with Robin Hobb for putting him through these trials. I felt like it was very cruel. And we already sort of went through that storyline with Rentro during Live Ship Traders, where he was put up as a slave and then eventually taken by Kenneth, who I thought was one of the most fascinating villains Robin Hobb has ever written. And there's really no villains like that in the series that are so well explored and so well written. This Duke was really nasty. I didn't like him, but I don't know. It was just sort of rushed. And I heard on Patrick Leo's Goodreads review, he was talking about how originally this was supposed to be a 2-book series. 2 very chunky books. And the publisher ended up forcing the split up of it. So I think that would explain the pacing issues I had because book 2, as I said, really ramped it up because we have this big flood come in and all of the dragons start dealing with parasites and the humans have to bunker down basically and really take care of these dragons. And I thought that was the most fascinating part because we get a lot of lore about the dragons and how they lived during the Elderling times and then now in the present, where they don't have all of that, and they're trying to get to the city of Kelsingua, which I love that city. That's probably one of my favorite settings of the series, and I absolutely loved it. But they get there at the end of book 2, and book 3 I thought was my favorite book, aside from book 2, and book 4 was just did not like that book as much, even though it had a lot of really fascinating story elements, as I said, with the Duke and Selden. But book 3 was all about the discovery of Kelsingua and seeing how it worked. It really reminded me sort of like Wheel of Time, where we're learning about Shadow Logoth and sort of the lore behind that evil city. And this is a very different type of city where it was won by the Elderlings in service to the dragons. And I just love that. I really love that side of the storyline. We have Thymara exploring the city, and she's going into a romance with, I can't remember that guy's name. It was just a character I did not care for at all. He kept going on and on about how she was this elderling woman from thousands of years before, hundreds of years. I don't remember exactly the timeline, but, many millennia ago. And she is resistant to this and is like, no, I'm my own person. Like, this is not me. And I didn't care for that side of the storyline, but everything else with Kelsingua, I really enjoyed. And I love exploring the city, seeing how the springs worked, getting the scenes of the humans as well as the dragons, bathing in those baths in the springs because they're very hot. They are rejuvenate, or they're very restorative to both humans and the dragons. It heals wounds. It revitalizes them, revitalizes their energy, revitalizes the health. Just many fascinating elements to the city, and I loved that. I loved that book, City of Dragons. But Blood of Dragons, my issue, as I said before, was the resolution. Hest eventually comes down to Kelsingua and finds Elise and Selden or Cedric. I'm sorry, Cedric and Carson, because Cedric and Carson are now a couple, and it's just amazing. And we also have the ship's captain who is in love with Elise now, and Elise loves her as well. And so we have two amazing couples, and then we have Hest, who was married to Elise, but was privately in love in a very exploitative, abusive way, just awful person, as I said. He had a really abusive relationship with Cedric. So you have these two couples now who have broken free of Hest, which I love that. I love that they're not with him anymore. But he comes back and to both of them is trying to get with them again. And once he is taken away and sort of told off, he is then given, not really given, but he finds a chance to get with the young boy who is like 14 or 16 at the oldest. And he tries to get with him, and he makes out with him and all this nasty, shitty stuff. And I think it's Carson finds him in the middle of this and tells Hest off. And so Hest sort of walks away and says, like, oh, he was asking for it. It's fine. Which, you know, we encounter that a lot in our day-to-day lives. And it's really shitty. I didn't want that kind of character in the series. But, you know, hey, ends up, he wanders to the spring, and he is eaten by a dragon, and no one knows where he goes after he walks away from Carson. No one knows that he was eaten. And so it's really disappointing, because I wanted the scene of Elise and Cedric reacting to him getting eaten, but they're kind of like, oh, he's missing, whatever. And it's wrapped up, and that's it. And for me, that was the most satisfying of the conclusions in the series, because I just hated Hest. I wanted him eaten, and he did get eaten, and I think he absolutely deserved what he had coming to him, because he was just such an abusive piece of shit. And it was just, I don't know, he wasn't interesting enough as a villain, and he was one of the main villains of this entire 4-book series, but the first 2 books, he is very distant from the storyline outside of telling Elise and Cedric what to do. And I just hated that. I hated his character. I hated that love triangle between him and those two's love interests. I hated all that. I didn't care about it. I loved the characters themselves. Thought they were great, but Hest was just, anytime he showed up on page, I just hated it. I hated the books. And I wanted more interesting characters. And it seemed like there was a lot of rehashing being done with these characters. And Elise was the most important, but she was very reminiscent of the character of, oh my gosh, this is so bad, but one of the eldest sisters of Malta. I forget her name. But the one who was trying to, and successfully, takes over the live ship with her husband. God, what's his name? This is so bad. I should have read the character list. But yeah, like, this is just sort of a prevalent issue in the series, was that the characters were just not interesting whatsoever, outside of Elise, Thymara, and Cedric. And Carson for a little bit, because he was more explored and talked about in book 2 and 3. And yeah, again, as I said, those middle 2 books were my favorite, but book 1 and 4 were probably my least favorites of the entire realm of the Elderlings. So I'm trying to think. I love the battle at the end when all the dragons restore Tintaglia, because she is about to die. She's being hunted by the Chalcedeans, however you say that. I'm sorry if I messed it up, but they are hunting the dragons and just keep successfully wounding dragons. and they almost kill Tintaglia. And so there comes a point where all the dragons, they realize, oh no, Tintaglia is about to die. We need her memories. And they all declare war on Chalced, and they all fly in and just burn the entire city for the most part. And they kill the Duke, they eat him, they rescue his daughter, who is taking care of Cedric, or Selden, I'm sorry, Selden. Selden is rescued by the dragons, and he is reunited with Tintaglia, which was an amazing scene. I love the last, 100 pages, aside from the Hess portions of Blood of Dragons. But this was just a book that I'm happy to have read the series. I don't know if it's a worthy entry. I don't know if I'd recommend it. But I think for the dragon parts, I will recommend the series because the dragons are very important to the storyline of Realm of the Elderlings. And it's really hard to, I guess, get any satisfaction outside of that storyline. So I was a little upset at how low I rated these books, but I think for the dragons, I'm very happy because as a fantasy fan, the dragons were my favorite. I loved Icefire, Tintaglia. We have the really big guy, something Mar. I can't remember, but there's so many great dragons in these books. And I'm really happy to have read it overall on that side, but again, everything else, no. I was interested for the most part in Thymara, Elise, and Cedric, but not many others. And Malta, let me talk about Malta for a second. She becomes a major character because she is pregnant with her firstborn, and she and her husband, who is one of the Renwild royalty, I forget his name, sorry, but they both have the baby in book 3, and the baby is taken, and while her husband is dealing with the politics with the councils, she is sort of kidnapped along with the baby because she is giving birth to this baby, and she gives birth in this really nasty brothel where it's just very unclean. It's the least reputable in the city, and they purposely take her there because everyone's like, oh, no one's going to look here for her. And so they take over, and they take her, and she births the baby. She's in labor when she's kidnapped, so she doesn't really have a say. And she delivers the baby, and she kills them, and heavily wounds the other one. And so they're able to get away, the baby and her, and everything's good with that, but then everyone's trying to hunt after the baby. So she has to go to Cassandra herself because without the dragon, her baby will die. As much as I am very interested in Malta's storyline, again, I felt like this was very cruel of Robin Hobb. And it's getting to the point where I know that the point of the series is sort of putting the characters through the ringer because Fitz has a very abusive and just toxic and painful storyline throughout all of his books. But I don't want every single character to go through this. As much as her storyline upped the rating for me because I was actually interested in her storyline, I felt like it was a bit much. So I'm happy that her baby does survive. They do get to Cassandra, and Tintaglia comes and restores the baby and allows him to become more of an elderling than a human. That way that he's able to breathe and his organs are now dragon-like, so he's good. I'm very happy about that. I'm happy the baby survived. I was very sick. I was actually sick in the stomach during her POVs because he has to lay down on the live ship, and the live ship is manually pumping his blood or pumping his heart in order to get the blood through his body and helping with organ function. And it was just really, really stressful. So I think Malta's storyline really pushed the rating up, but I was really upset as a fan because I thought Malta was done with pain and all that, which I guess is not realistic, but whatever. I don't need every single character to go through a traumatic storyline. And it was just so traumatic. I did not like it whatsoever. So that's sort of my thoughts on these books. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Please correct me if I have Selden incorrectly. I think it's him. But yeah, I give this series like a 7.5 out of 10. It was good, borderline great at times, but for the most part, I don't think I'll ever reread this series again. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.